That's right, I'm back in the saddle with this 10th installment of Charge It to the Game. Uh, yeah, I've been a little MIA on the channel. Here, yes, but y'all know where to catch me if you don't see me here for a bit. You know about my contributions over on the Charger Chat pod and also the Lightning Round podcast, so I'm never too far away. Yeah, so, no, y'all not worrying about it too much, but cool, man. Off season. It's not the most active of times, but there's typically always something you can take away from things that are going around the league, not just in Charger land, but things that could affect them moving forward going into the season and hopefully into the postseason, which they absolutely, I mean, if I was a betting man, I would wager that Chargers will be in the playoffs. And we're not just talking about one and done skis. These boys should be able to make some real noise. All just kind of based on the roster construction, but not only that, just the way that they match up against some of these teams. And that's what I want to talk about a little bit today. We know what the division is going to bring. We can kind of gloss over that a little bit, but we need to start looking at the bigger picture. And I'm not really putting the cart before the horse here, not trying to at least. I just see the path. As much as you can see it before the season actually starts, because of course they got to play the snaps. And teams change from year to year, usually not very drastically. There are like maybe one or two that make big leaps or fall back. But usually it's not this like drastic overhaul. The guys that are going to be good are typically the same guys for years at a time. So let's start with my favorite move of the offseason, which may make some of y'all roll y'all's eyes. I don't really care. Bruh, I'm really going Kyle Van Noy signing. I think it's super underrated. You got some of the pundits out there that kind of feel where I'm coming from because you look at a dude who's got Super Bowl pedigree, so he's a champ. You also got J.C. Jackson in that regard. But it's just a dude who does multiple things well, who you can align in various positions. And you start thinking about defensive sets and how you can attack offenses, and you start coming up with all these wild formations and ideas where you can have multiple edge rushers in the box. You know, can kick Joey inside to like a 4-eye, something along those lines, and just like let him get after guards and attack tackles, inside shoulders, and things of that nature. Yo, pairing Joey opposite a Khalil Mack, or hell, even on the same side as him, or you want to put Khalil Mack on the same side with Derwin. You want to take Kyle Van Noy, align him on the outside of either Joey or Khalil. You want to put Joey, Van Noy, and Derwin on one side Russians. Like you want to put Van Noy at off-ball inside linebacker and let him attack from the second level. They're just waves and different sets and personnel packages that can be utilized to just terrorize quarterbacks. Offensive coordinators are going to have a long day every week because this team gets to dictate on defense, which isn't something you can say about the Chargers defense or haven't been able to say about them for quite some time. When you have this many options, there's literally no excuse for not being able to put offenses in poor situations, bad down and distance situations. You should always be able to get pressure on the quarterback. Even on the interior, a Sebastian Joseph Day, who profiles very well as an interior pass rusher, and he showed, some growth there in that regard last season before he got hurt when he was with the Rams. And it's there. Defensively, from a defensive standpoint, the Chargers have no excuse not to be like a top 5 to 7 defense in the league. All these pieces just kind of coming together. Of course, cohesive thing you have to build through camp, but the relationships are there. You look at just the back end, the J.C. Jackson signing and his relationship with Derwin and that synergy. And we saw Nas grow as a player last season. Hell, I didn't even mention Bryce Callahan. Dude, like, seriously, come on now. For real. You're looking at all these different players that have now been added to a defense where Brandon Staley showed you what his plan of attack was last season, and it's probably going to be even more so implemented this year because he has all the pieces. He doesn't have to do the thing where he did last season, where he gets to the bye week, realized what didn't work, and had to strip things down. Essentially, just had to go into a lot of vanilla looks. Well, vanilla in comparison to what it is he wants to do, just because he didn't have the horses to make it work. It's not a thing this year. Austin Johnson is a solid pickup as well. When we're just talking about from a run-stopping perspective, he and Sebastian Joseph Day, Otito Agbanya, out of UCLA, big body cat. Probably has some stuff that the Chargers staff liked. I mean, we heard interviews about it. They put him through some workouts, and he passed with flying colors. Somebody you can throw in the mix there. There's multiple bodies there up front. Even when you're talking about guys that were already on the roster, when you got Forrest Merrill, who we'll see where he ends up coming into camp and where cuts are concerned. But Braden Fajoko played his behind off in the snaps that he got last year. You could argue he should have gotten more run. When we're talking about just all those collective big bodies, dudes who have proven themselves to be assets, whether it's against the run, whether they have any pass rushing chops at all, those can be developed. You definitely want to be able to manufacture that pass rush, specifically up the middle. So we'll see what the plan is there, who steps up in that regard, or if, there's another move that's made prior to the season starting. I don't know anything, just saying. It's an idea. I'm not saying, I'm just saying. Well then, from an offensive standpoint, we know what it is. I think Austin Eckler is going to play, I'm not going to say a larger role, because he's already a huge part of the offense. He's kind of a centerpiece. I mean, you could argue outside of Justin Herbert, Austin Eckler is probably the most important weapon the Chargers have on that side of the ball. We all know what Slay is about. Who Mike Williams is. The Gerald Everett signing. Humongous. Huge. This might be his opportunity to finally put all the pieces together and prove that he was worth that second round pick, man. Dude's super athletic. Everett's young. He's got a lot to prove this year, and I think he's willing, ready, and able to do it. You got Parham, who's back, ready to roll. Again, not very many 6'8" tight ends with his ability, specifically talking about from a movement standpoint. We saw dudes getting juked out of their shoes by arguably the biggest man on the field, at least from a height perspective, at any given time. And Trey McKitty, who was somebody that I was a fan of, that I know most people didn't understand the pick when it was made a couple years ago. I think he's going to be a bigger part of the offense as well. As a receiver, maybe get some H-back run. Go back and look at Trey from his Florida State days before he went to Georgia. It's a different player altogether. The way they utilized him, Georgia, with their multiple weapons and what they were asking for him to do didn't really reflect the type of player he was in his FSU days. I think he'll start looking more like that guy this year and in years to come. So the Chargers tight end situation is probably a lot better than what people give it credit for. Yeah, y'all know how I feel about the wide receiving core. 1 and 2, fine. Who's 3? Is it going to be Josh Palmer? Even though I know Josh is going to get more run. And that's another guy that, if you go back in time, check the Twitter, pull the files, I was higher on than most when the pick was made, just because I have some inside SEC knowledge and some people that I trust that were telling me good things about the pick right away, and some film that I got to watch on him the day of the pick. Does he feel like the whole speed down the field deal? Nah, he can get vertical. He's a physical wide receiver. He can play across the middle. He's pretty much fearless. As far as like a consistent deep threat, that's not the dude that you want to be trying to toss the ball 50, 60 yards downfield too consistently. You'd have to set stuff like that up. But, he can pretty much do it all. I call him like a blend of Keenan and Mike Williams, because he takes some of their best traits and he doesn't do either as well as either of them do, but he's kind of like the perfect mesh between the two, which is why we got to start having a conversation about what the wide receiving core is going to look like going forward in 23 because it may be different. I originally thought that that pick was made to be the potential Mike Will replacement if they couldn't get him re-signed, and I think that was the plan originally. I mean, they had no idea, or maybe they did, that Williams was going to have what would be considered a breakout year last season. But it just seemed like they were preparing themselves if they were just over Mike Williams and going to let him walk, or if he had a great season. Now, you know what? Now that I think about it and I'm talking myself through it, I think they probably, as much as they claim to like him, weren't going to be able to justify paying him big money based on the numbers that he's given throughout his first few seasons as a Charger. And they were probably prepared to let him walk if need be. And Palmer was going to slide in as his replacement this year. But now, you see how much money's tied up in that wide receiver room, and you kind of got to start looking at the future. Unless Slay is willing to make some moves contractually, he could be the odd man out. It's nothing I want to see. Y'all know how I feel about Keenan Allen. He's one of my favorite players, not just on the team, but in the NFL as a former wide receiver. Have an affinity for those dudes. And I just love his work ethic and everything about him, his mentality, his swag. Slay is Slay, and I can't imagine him in a different uniform, but there's some potential for that to happen. And again, talking about what this wide receiver 3 position looks like. Is it going to be Palmer or is it Jalen Guyton? I think Jalen Guyton is going to be used more as a specialty guy. He'll get run. I mean, they're going to run full wide receiver sets. But you can't tell me that Jalen Guyton is a better number 3 than Josh Palmer. He may offer a different skill set. Pardon me. But overall as a receiver, I think Palmer's going to exceed that if he hasn't already. From a technical standpoint, definitely when it comes to hands, just go look at drop rates. I'm not here to bag on Guyton because I want him to succeed. You know, he's a part of the team. He plays well, and everybody else is probably going off too. But I just don't see him as more than number 4. It would be really nice if there was another speed element, true speed element. You know, I keep pushing for that. An explosive player who can be a creator, catch shorter routes, slants, hitches, 5-yard outs, bubble screens, smoke screens, end arounds, things like that. House calls. You want to play touchdown, dude. We don't really have that. And I think that kind of limits Guyton because, I mean, you saw it. Most teams knew that when Guyton was on the field. We heard Coach talk about it. They knew that 9 times out of 10, they needed to keep a cover over the top of the defense to ensure that he didn't get behind them. Now, it worked out a few times, but not nearly as effectively as it was a couple years ago when there was another speedster on the team whose name I don't want to say because every time I think about what was done there, kind of makes me a little sad. And he's also a Louisiana kid like me, so I was hoping he would stick around. But hey, make the decisions and you got to live with them. Anywho, back to Austin Eckler though. I touched on this a few times. I do believe Eck is going to play more wide receiver. He's going to line up in the slot now wide with the addition of Isaiah Spiller, who is also, as you saw, one of my favorite draft picks because I was a former running back before I was a wide receiver, and I know what I like when I see my backs. And Isaiah Spiller has a lot of the things that I like. He actually kind of reminds me of a dude I used to play with in high school who wasn't the fastest cat, but he had eyes in the back of his head. His vision was ridiculous, and you see him get run down from behind very often. Now, I mean, if you line him up and had him run the 40, probably wasn't going to be one of your top times. But for some reason, cat gets on the field, and the game speed's just different. Just tremendous feel for finding holes, excellent footwork, and he's not afraid of contact. Isaiah Spiller is going to make a tremendous impact on this team. Whether you like the pick or not, I mean, if you didn't, you're probably going to feel different about it come mid-season, and especially in that playoff run. A less worn down Austin Eckler, who's, only taken like 12, 13, somewhere between 10, 12 carries or so between the tackles, but is also being utilized as an offensive weapon out of the backfield and out wide. Is going to pay off dividends long term. You got a dude who can grind it out a little bit, who is pretty consistent in college in the SEC. And this past season, that Texas A&M offensive line was nasty work, and he still made it happen behind that while splitting carries. It's also something to pay attention to. That it's one of the recruiting for A&M actually. When they bring these kids in, one of the pitches is that they won't wear them down. So you'll see them in like 2 and 3 back systems. They're not getting a ton of carries, and they're fresh for the NFL. So they get to showcase their skills and not have all the tread worn on their tires by the time draft day rolls around. Win-win. Yo, that just kind of leaves the one elephant in the room that we all know about in the right tackle. One thing I know for sure, there's no way some Lloyd rolling out there tackle. I feel like it's hitting his job loose. So going to camp trying to have to look horrible and Lloyd not come be guy. They don't seem to want to move Matt Filer out to right tackle, though they can. And the idea has been floated. We've actually seen it said now. It went from, I believe, Telesco saying that they wanted to keep the continuity the same on the left side to Brandon Staley mentioning that Filer is an option. And you've got the Jamari Sawyer pick, which was super clutch for that kid to be around where he was with a 3rd and 4th round draft grade on many people's boards. Watching what he did to Aiden Hutchinson at Michigan and back in high school, everybody loves the short arm bandit. I mean, I call him, he's got little baby arms. It's like the T-Rex thing. For some reason, nobody cares about that with Aiden Hutchinson, but, it's a big deal. Let me go on my Aiden Hutchinson rant real quick. Why Aiden Hutchinson Captain America? Who made him that? PFF did like this whole salute to him, like where they did this background story for him. It's like they were worshiping the dude. Probably a shrine Aiden Hutchinson at the PFF offices. I'd watch out for that because it seems like a narrative being pushed. Not to be that guy. Not really what I said a conspiracy theorist. I'm just a list and pay attention to things that I'm. It's just something, just that. But yes, back to what I was talking with Sawyer. Sawyer was working homeboy since back in the day. So he's shown the ability to play tackle and guard and left tackle. I mean, as far as the athletic profile, he's not the best of athletes. I mean, of course, back in the day, would he have been maybe a better fit at right tackle? Yeah, back when pass rushers were predominantly coming from, like, your best pass rusher was on the left side or the right outside linebacker or right defensive end, right edge, whatever you want to call him. He was going head up against your left tackle. And you were running predominantly to your right side, and that guy would be more of a run stopper, so you didn't have to be as much of a great pass protector. Your footwork didn't have to be amazing. You wanted more of a road grader on that side. That's not today's NFL. You got dual edge rushers with some of the skill sets. And I'm not counting Sawyer out. I mean, I know that they want him to play guard. That's probably where he's going to end up. But like I said before, it's a camp battle. You got multiple names. I mean, we know where Zion's going to be. Could Zion play tackle in the pinch? Probably, but that's going to be a starting right guard. Even though you could argue that, his bread was buttered at left guard, and kicking Filer out right tackle would make sense since we've already seen Matt Filer at right tackle in Pittsburgh and know what he's capable of doing out there. You know what? I'm not a part of the coaching staff. I'm just, again, looking at the roster is currently constructed and thinking about what makes sense. You got an all-pro left tackle, all-pro center, and a guy who played right tackle at least an average clip in Pittsburgh. I have no problem sticking a rookie left guard in Zion in between that on the left side, and whoever you want to line up at right guard at that point, whether it be Brendan Hymus, who is also listed on the Chargers website on their roster currently as offensive guard and offensive tackle, something to keep an eye on, or Jamari Sawyer. Either way, I'm comfortable, sandwiching them in between Corey Linsley and Matt Filer on the right side. They'll make it work one way or the other. There are options, and it's like I keep saying, you don't need an all-pro right tackle, man. You got 4 to 5 slots figured out. You can do things to help the right tackle as long as they're not just a warm body over there taking up space, at least serviceable. You can make that work. And the weakest link is your right tackle. There could be worse things. At least you're not having destructive play, disrupting, drive, killing interior pressure up the gut every passing down. Because that's the worst. I've always been a proponent of getting pressure on the quarterback up the middle as opposed to outside, first and foremost, because you can manufacture some outside pressure a little bit easier than I think you can inside. There's a lots of complicated twists and stunts and things that have to happen, blitzes from your interior line, inside linebackers, things of that nature, safeties that you want to bring in from the deep third to come down into the box to blitz, things like that. You start having to throw different looks to get interior pressure if you can't manufacture that one-on-one. Where on the outside, it's a little bit easier to draw up. And if you're doing a whole bunch of things to manufacture pressure on the interior, you're probably taking away from something in your defense and your front that can be attacked in other ways. So as long as they have the interior locked up, which it seems they do, and there should be no reason why they don't, the offensive line is going to be just fine. And you got that rock on the left side. You know what I call him? The baby-faced bully. That dude over there, you got nothing to worry about. On the right side, we'll see what happens there, but I think they'll be fine. Oh, man. How did I not get to this yet? So, sorry, voluntary, been gone so long, I forgot how to talk. OTAs, early on, first week, Mr. Jerry Tillery decided that it was a good idea to stay away. And I think he also scrubbed his Twitter, who, for those of you who care about stuff like this, of all things Chargers. I haven't looked recently, but someone brought to my attention that he changed his profile picture. And if you didn't know, you wouldn't know the dude played for the Chargers. I don't know, bro. I don't know if any of this is a good look for you. I don't know if you think you're a bigger deal than what you are. I don't think if you feel like you've earned the right to have had that fifth-year option picked up. I don't know if maybe someone told you something and they went back on it, so you're feeling a little slighted about it. But let's just have a look in the mirror on this one. Because sometimes you got to ask yourself a question. If year in and year out, things don't seem to be working your way, and coaching staffs change, but your results don't change very much from scheme to scheme, coach to coach, you might want to ask yourself, take a Michael Jackson moment, and look at the man in the mirror. Maybe it's you, dog. And I don't know if you're doing any more of a service to yourself, definitely a disservice, by not more so endearing yourself to your teammates and coaching staff by showing up for this stuff. Because it's not like you're Joey Bosa. I mean, hell, Joey's actually there. So think about that. Joey, who typically works out with his own people in Florida in the offseason, shows up, but Jerry Tillery didn't. If you're Jerry Tillery, if you have any level of self-awareness, you would know that that's probably not the best look for you. You've already got some knocks against you, and then they also decided to sign Morgan Fox, who essentially has proven himself to be able to do what they want you to do. Now, is Morgan Fox a 3-down guy in this defensive front? In a base set, no. But if you're talking about coming out and playing a lot of primary nickel and dime fronts, because there's a very good chance the Chargers roll out some 5-1 sets where they literally just have one linebacker on the field. And Morgan Fox probably plays a larger role in that regard. We don't know what they're looking to do just yet, but if the time spent with the Rams is any indication, he's going to get some serious run. and you start looking at the defensive line room and your edge guys, and I mean, not necessarily the edge dudes, more the interior defensive linemen, things look a little murky for old Jerry. Y'all know what I say, man. They bring a dude in who plays your position mostly and has the same type of responsibilities within the defense that you do, and you may want to start updating your resume because they're probably looking to make a move. They're not going to pay the dude. He's not shown himself to be that type of player, and then he's a first-round pick. You don't want to have to give up on them if, it's not necessary. But what we've learned here in this offseason is that this is very much so Brandon Staley's team. Look at the guys they brought in. In years past, stuff like this hasn't happened. Now, also, you have to keep in mind that free agents want to come here. They have to want to come here. And that's not been a thing in the past. Not dudes level. But it also shows that relationships matter as well. One of the reasons why Khalil Mack was elated to be here. He's had some of his best years in the NFL attached to Brandon Staley, or his best year, or however you want to look at it. And other players, Sebastian Joseph Day, Morgan Fox, we can go on, Bryce Callahan, all these dudes have the relationship with Brandon Staley, who is a relationship guy. What is the relationship with Brandon Staley and Jerry Tillery? What is he doing to foster that by staying away during OTs? Now, he's there now. Showed up just this past week. But I think it may be too far gone for him. And I would venture to say that I don't think Jerry Tillery is going to take a snap as a Los Angeles Charger this year. I could be 1,000% wrong. I'm just saying that if he gets cut, traded, I would not be shocked. Who would trade for him? Don't know. But there's always somebody out there who feels like they're willing to go on a reclamation project. And from what I hear, there's a sucker born every minute. So, hey, who knows? But, man, outside of that, just really optimistic about this season, which as historically a pessimistic Chargers fan, I cannot say I've been this excited in years past, because you always just expect something to go wrong. But there's so much that has gone right here. Even if something did happen kind of out of the blue, which, no, it's not going to happen. I'm not proclaiming that at all. I wouldn't be like totally heartbroken, because there's so many new pieces, so many holes that have been filled, that it just feels like it's time to get it going. And that leads me into what I mentioned when I kicked this whole thing off. Looking at the broader picture in the AFC, the big bad wolf right now looks like the Buffalo Bills. I'm curious to see what Josh Allen looks like without Brian Daboll, though. I mean, they did add some weapons for him on offense through the draft and free agency, which is cool. Kid's a complete unit from a passing and movement standpoint. We know what he can do with his legs, dual threat. But just want to know what that offense is like without Brian Daboll there, who's in New York now. Defensively, we know what that looks like. And they drafted Kyer Elam to kind of fortify that secondary. So they're no worse for the wear on that side of things. But, they're kind of the big boy on the block. And the way that I feel like the Chargers would match up with them in a playoff setting is, I think that you can definitely run the ball on them. And with what the Chargers have built up front and the addition of Isaiah Spiller, if for some reason you'd have to take a road trip to Buffalo, where it would almost inevitably be cold in the playoffs, then I don't think the Chargers suffer all that much. Now, would they be accustomed to playing cold weather games? No, but I feel like you're more built for it. You've got a nasty, rugged front. You've got a running back who's used to toting the rock, who's more of a physical back than who your 1A guy is. And at this point, the question becomes, well, who's your third back? Yeah. I'm not even going to get into all of that. Isaiah Spiller, Austin Eckler, I think could be a dynamic 1-2 punch even in situations like that. Spiller probably carries a little bit more of the load, which he will as the season goes on, I believe, anyway. And as opposed to being like your RB1, RB2, it'll be more of a 1A, 1B situation. Of course, Spiller will have to prove himself, and as long as he does that, which I believe he will, then that combination should be more than enough to carry you. But there still needs to be a running back 3 waiting in the wings who can come in and take some serious snaps if need be without there being much of a fall off. What you don't want is to have a running back where if he comes in, you know he's probably not going to be a huge part of the passing game, and one of them who can't really do very much in regards to pass protection. Blitz pickup. Spiller was pretty decent with that at A&M, by the way. Now, you know, you got your next 2 guys in line who, no disrespect, I'm just not speaking on their names right now because I don't know who's going to be around and I don't want to give any allegiance to one or the other. If you know me, you probably know which one I would be looking for to not be around anymore, but I'm not going to do that to dude. Respect. But against the Bills, offensively, passing game, probably more of a quick game, which is like a staple of the offense right now anyway, but even more so if we're talking about from a weather perspective. If it's inclement, then probably not going to be tossing a whole lot of balls down the field. And you got a big body receiver in Mike Williams, bigger body in Donald Parham. Keenan's still going to be your possession dude. And I think that's going to be a rough knockdown, drag-out game. Defensively, you got what you need in your front to stop the run now. So if that's their plan, to kind of limit Josh Allen throwing the ball around the yard and doing more of the ground game, then they did an awesome job this offseason, in just supplementing the defensive line, actually blowing that bad boy up and retooling it with dudes who are made to do that. So I think they would be really, really, really good matchup-wise against the Bills. Hopefully that game could take place in SoFi as opposed to Orchard Park, that's where the Bills play, right? Orchard Park. But either way, I think the matchup works out just fine. You just have to kind of tailor your game plan to the location. Run game's probably heavier if you're playing there. You can probably do more of what you're accustomed to doing throughout the season if you're playing at SoFi. But I also still think the running game is going to be pretty important this year anyway, one way or the other. Most people think that it's just going to be about slinging it all over the yard, which it very well might be. I mean, your quarterback is Justin Herbert, for God's sake, but you won't have to lean on him as heavily because I think the running game is going to be much better than it has here in years past. But, yep, that is it for me, folks. I've been rambling about. Hopefully some of what I said made sense to you, because sometimes I get off in my own little football world and I'm talking like I'm talking to my buddies, and they know how I get when I'm in the trenches of my own mind, especially when talking about football, Chargers football, that is. But y'all know what I always say. You don't have to agree with me whatsoever. It's perfectly fine, you know. Just whatever thoughts and feelings you have. Do your own research. Back it up with verifiable information. Don't just take my word for it. Talking heads, the pundits, know-it-alls, whoever, man. Learn for yourself and stand on it. And if you don't agree with me at all, it's cool, man. You know what it is. Charge that bad boy to the game, man. You know, I love you either way. But until the next one, man, y'all take it easy. It's been your boy, Mr. Petty Pendergrass, Petty White, Zen Crea, Zenjamin Aflac, depending on which day you catch me. Next time, y'all be good, though. Take it easy. Gone.